case, so hello everyone. Welcome to this year's APAC convention. I have the pleasure of having Nik Peachey as the opening speaker. And well, we have a bit of an anecdote here. We were chatting together with Nik that we actually met in 2009. Well, I actually met Nik basically in 2009 for another conference. And so it's great that today we're here for a little role reversal, where he's at a conference that actually APAC has organized. So it's actually really, really a real pleasure to have you again, shall I say, and to re-meet you so many years later. And yeah, I'm really looking forward, we're all really looking forward to your session. This was a very exciting project. And yep, whenever you're ready, I'll just turn my camera off so you can start your presentation. Thanks so much for being here.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to come along and do this. And you know, I actually used to live in Barcelona, so it's very sad not to be able to come there in person. I taught at International House Barcelona for some time, and my first daughter was born in Barcelona as well. So wow. It has a really strong attachment for me. Anyway, so thanks to the wonders of technology, I won't be there, and I'll be doing my presentation here instead. I'll be going through the slides and showing you some different prompts and some information about artificial intelligence and language teaching. At the end of the presentation, you'll be able to scan a QR code and get the slides, and I'll also share a link to the slides as well, so that you'll be able to get them. Hopefully, it'll come along with this the recording of the presentation. So my name's Nik Peachey, and I'm Pedagogical Director of PeacheyPublications, among other things. Some of the other things I do, that's me post-lockdown. I've won 2 innovations awards from the British Council for different products that I've developed. I've actually been shortlisted 6 times. I've studied educational technology. Actually, I started studying educational technology while I was still in Barcelona, and that was 25 years ago, just before my daughter was born. And I've been a teacher for some time. Nowadays, I work as publishing my own materials, doing consultancy work and doing training work as well. I've published a couple of books and courses connected with artificial intelligence. One is ChatGPT in the language classroom, and the other one is AI tools for the language classroom. And if you'd like to check out the sort of things that I share on social media, you can click on these icons. Once you get a link to the presentation, you can check those out. Okay, so that's a little bit about me and what I do. In this session, we'll be looking at artificial intelligence, mainly at chatbots. I'll start with some of the background to my history with artificial intelligence and chatbots, and then I'll look specifically at a chatbot called ChatGPT, which probably most of you have heard of, and that's the one that seems to be making the most fuss at the moment. And I'll have a look at some of the things that you can do with it as a teacher or as a student, and some of the challenges and opportunities that raises. So going backwards a little bit, my first interaction with chatbots and artificial intelligence was actually quite a long time ago. It's back in 2001, 2002, I think, and I was teaching for the British Council in Morocco, and I had a group of sort of early teenage students who were about 11, 12, 13. They had quite a high level of English, and but they were very reluctant to speak to each other. So I was looking around for digital tools that they could use to sort of get some practice. At the time, chat rooms were very popular, so I went and had a look at a chat room and quickly realized that they were totally unsuitable for my young teenage students. Most of them, apart from most of the people there sort of asking what gender I was and things like that, I found that most people had very little to actually say in the chat rooms, and it was all quite a disappointing experience. You know, a lot of the the conversation was basically, "Hey dude, what's up? Where are you?" And that was about it. So I gave up on that idea and I started looking for other things. At the time, I was very lucky because there was a film that had just been issued called Artificial Intelligence, and it's a still film by Steven Spielberg, and based on a production by Stanley Kubrick, and it's a remake of the story of Pinocchio. And in the film, you know, the boy in the film is an android who wants to become a real boy. He wants to be loved because he wants to be loved by his mother, and he plays the, you know, the part of Pinocchio, if you like. And it mirrors the kind of Pinocchio tale in that, you know, he goes through all these different trials and tries to be more like a human so that his mother will love him. It's a very interesting film that brings up a lot of the ethical issues that we're confronting now with the development of artificial intelligence. So it's well worth checking out if you're interested in those things. But getting back to my language class, and what I found when I went online was that there was a very good website that was promoting the film, and on the website there was a chatbot, and it was just a simple field that you could type into, and you could type questions into it and start to chat with the AI chatbot there. And so I gave this link to my students and got them to practice chatting with the AI chatbot, and they really enjoyed it. And it took them a while to realize it wasn't a real person, but they were asking all sorts of questions, and it was answering them, and they were enjoying, you know, practicing using their English. Some of the things that they liked about it was that it would answer any question they asked, which was great. It didn't get tired or bored or impatient with them, and it had no kind of ego or self-consciousness, so it didn't mind what they asked it. It would still try and answer. They could ask it about art or politics or even love, you know, and get its opinions about love, and they really enjoyed this kind of interaction. What they did find, though, is that it had a very short attention span. And so artificial intelligence in those days didn't really have much more than a goldfish memory. So the chatbot would answer a question, but if they wanted to dig deeper, or if they wanted to refer back to a question that they'd asked earlier, the chatbot had totally forgot about that and had no recollection of it. And it pretty soon got confused. And so there's still a lot of limitations to the abilities of the chatbot then, and of course it was only text chat at that time as well. That's very different from the kind of chatbots that we have access to now, which are much better. Now they can sort of follow quite long conversational threads. So if you start talking to something like ChatGPT, you can reference earlier statements in the conversation just as you would with the real person, which is quite remarkable. I think it can remember up to something like 4,000 words in a conversation, which is probably more than most of the people I know, I think, including myself. It can also instigate response, so it will start asking you questions as well. It isn't just passive, it's an active interlocutor. It can also be programmed, which is quite interesting. So you can program it to do small tasks, and we'll be looking at that and look how to program it using what's called prompts, which are basically pieces of text that you put into the chatbot in order to get a response. And it may sound quite complex, the idea that you can program ChatGPT, but it isn't complex at all. It's actually very simple. You just program it using your first language. So you don't need to learn JavaScript or Python or any of those complex programming languages. The other interesting thing about it is that it can be used to power other apps. And so now there's a whole bunch of tools being developed that are based upon, you know, large language models like ChatGPT and ChatGPT for that matter. If you want to find out more about the mechanics of ChatGPT and how it works, I've added a link to a video here. So if you click on it, you'll be able to watch the video, and this young woman here will explain a bit more about machine learning and how things like large language models are developed. When you get the presentation, listen to her and watch her, and you might be interested to know that this isn't actually a real person speaking. It's an AI generated avatar using a text that I typed and added into it, and using an AI generated voice, although it's maybe based upon a real person. But this isn't a real person speaking. So check that out, see what you think about it. That's your homework. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at ChatGPT and what it can actually do for teachers, and take it into the context of our classrooms. So one thing it is very good at is actually planning lessons. If you think about how much time you spend planning lessons, or if you have to come up with a new lesson from scratch, it can be very time consuming. But ChatGPT can actually plan lessons for us. Under this button here, you can see that I've got a prompt, what I call a prompt template. And you can use this template and edit it in order to produce a lesson plan, whichever kind of lesson plan you want. You just add the time in for how long the lesson should be. You add the level of your students according to the Common European Framework, the aim of your lesson there. And you can also stipulate the type of approach you want, whether you want it to be guided discovery, test, teach, test, maybe task-based learning, whichever kind you want. So here's an example of what that looks like when it's edited. And I'm going to show you how that works. So if I copy that now, if you want to download these later, you can click on this button and it will download them as text. Now I'm going to ChatGPT, and here I'm going to copy in my prompt. And what I'm asking it to do, I'm asking it to write a 60-minute lesson plan to teach lessons of students who are about A2 level, about narrative tenses using a test, teach, test approach. And let's see how quickly it can do that. So I'm just going to click on enter. And as you can see, it starts producing that lesson plan immediately. And there you go, it's finished already. So there's my lesson plan, 60 minutes direct duration. It's got the objectives here. It's told me what materials I need. It tends to be quite traditional with materials. It's got an introduction and a warm-up activity. And then it's got the teaching section, which is presentation of narratives, practice, and then it's test. Okay, for me, I mean, it's great to have that lesson plan. It's something to begin working from. I think in this case, it hasn't really got the approach right, because it looks more like a kind of PPP lesson. It's the presentation, practice, and then test. So I'm going to ask it to change the approach. So I'm going to ask to change the approach to test, teach, tests, and I'll get it to rewrite it. Okay, this time it has done more of a test, teach, test approach, and it's got, you know, some suggestions for homework assignments and some ways to provide feedback. So again, you know, this might not be a great lesson plan, but it's a starting point that I can work from. And particularly for teachers who want to experiment with different approaches, they can ask ChatGPT to produce the same lesson using a range of different approaches so that you can try out new things. So that's, for me, that's quite a nice time saver and also quite a nice teacher training tool. So we just need to give it the aims of our lesson, the amount of time, the level of students, and the kind of approach we want, and ChatGPT can plan a lesson for us, which we can then edit and improve. ChatGPT is also great at creating materials for us as well, because the lesson plan isn't everything. You know, we have the lesson plan, but we still need to produce materials. It can produce songs and poems. It can produce stories or plays or any kind of written communication. So just demonstrate a few of these. Again, the prompt template's here, and you can also download it if you want to, just by clicking on this, and it will give you a simple version to copy paste. So let's have a look at poems to begin with. So it can write a poem on almost any topic. You can prompt it to add to use a specific lexical set of words. Maybe you've been practicing vocabulary around fruit or something like that. You can get it to write a poem about fruit. You can tell it the type of students you want to write it for, whether they're very young learners or whether they're adults. And you can even specify the style of poet if you want to, the name of the poet, and it will do it. It will produce a poem in the style of that poet. So I'm just going to give this one a try to show you how it works. I'm going to copy that, go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to start a new chat. It's always a good idea to start a new chat when you start a new subject. I'm going to put my prompt template in there, and then I'll edit it. So I'd like it to write me a poem about social media. Okay, because I'm studying social media and social media vocabulary with my students, but I want it to do it in the style of William Shakespeare. Okay, so I'll see how well it does that. And again, it's off and creating that poem very, very quickly, much more quickly than I could have done, that's for sure. And there's our poem about social media in the style of William Shakespeare. In cyberspace where screens do brightly gleam, the realm of tweets and posts, a digital dream, where souls in pixels, hearts in data streams, shall I in Shakespearean verse now scheme? So a very Shakespearean and a lovely poem. If I didn't like that poem and I wanted to edit it and click save and submit, it would do the same thing over again, and it would it would produce a completely different poem. You know, once again, this is a poem about social media in the style of Shakespeare, but it's done it completely differently. So it's not going to the internet, it's not copying somebody else's poem, it's generating something new every time based on the knowledge that it has. And that's pretty remarkable, I think. So that's one thing that we can get it to produce for our students. And we can also get it to produce things like story plots. So it could write a story for us, or it could write a plot outline that our students can then write into a story. Often students have problems with creative writing because they're struggling with the language and having to be creative at the same time. But we can get ChatGPT to produce a plot and then get our students to write the story based around the plot that it produces. And here's a template for that. And you can set the topic, the type, tell it about the type of students, the number of characters you want in the story, the settings, and here I tell it to create short bullet points so that it doesn't produce the whole story. It leaves some work for the students to do. And again, that's a really useful prompt for getting students to do writing activities. Plays as well are something else that can be really useful to do with students. You know, getting students to do drama and do plays together enables them to explore a wider range of sort of vocal expression and vocabulary than they would normally when they're talking. But coming up with plays that are suitable for our students with the right number of parts in them at the right level, you know, on the right topics can be very difficult to find. But again, using ChatGPT, we can get it to produce a play for us. You can either get it to write a play on any topic. You could have it based around a specific book that maybe you've been studying with your students. You can specify the number of characters, and again, you can even specify the playwright. So I'm going to give this a try again. I'm going to copy my prompt, go to GPT, start a new chat. Okay, so, and I'll follow on with my theme of social media, if I can spell it. I want for 5 students, and in the style of, I'll go for William Shakespeare again. Okay, and I'll just press enter. Okay, and quickly ChatGPT is producing a play for me that I can then get my students to act out. Scene 2, Act 3. Okay, and there's the end. So there's a nice short play. It's got the cast of characters here. It's called The Tweeting Tempest, a social media tragedy. And it's got King Statusius, Queen Selphia, Princess Visceral, Lady Hashtagia, and Sir Selfino. And then it sets the scene, a grandiose digital palace filled with holographic screens displaying scrolling text, emojis, trending hashtags. King Statusius sits on his virtual throne with Queen Selphia beside him and Prince Visceral pacing restlessly. And then it's got the dialogue for me. O noble followers of our digital realm, behold, I, King Statusius, I don't know how to pronounce that, ruler of this land, have proclaimed today a royal announcement of great importance. Okay, so there's my play with all the different parts. And again, as I said with the poem, if I decide to edit it and click save and submit again, it will produce another completely different play for me. So again, it's not copying somebody else's play, it's producing something unique each time. So, you know, if I had 25 students in my class and I wanted to I wanted to put them into groups of 5 and each group to do a different play, I can very easily produce 5 different play scenes that they can do. And if you see this number up here, I can switch between my first play, which is still there, and my second play, which is here now. So I just need to resubmit that prompt 5 times, and I've got 5 plays that my students can act out in class. So that's, you know, a huge time saver for me, because that would take me probably about a month to do if I had to write 5 different plays for my students. And I doubt that they would be any better as well. The other great thing that ChatGPT can do, it can produce any kind of written communication that you want to use as the basis for your lesson. So if you need examples of emails, examples of business letters, examples of children's stories, examples of status updates, whatever it is, for whatever purpose, you can ask ChatGPT to create it. And you know, just by telling it the form of text and telling it the purpose of the text, and you can tell it the style, whether you want it to be formal or informal, and you can actually ask it to change styles. And again, I'll show you how this can be made to work. So I'm going back to ChatGPT now. Again, I'll start a new chat. I'll put my prompt in here, my prompt template, and I'll edit it. So I'd like to write an email to a bank manager to ask for a loan or a car. I'll specify the amount. $2,000, well, $3,000. I'll get a nice car in a formal style. Okay, so I'm just clicking enter. And quickly, ChatGPT will come up with a template. for me that then I can copy and paste into a document and use as reading materials or example materials for my students. It's got lots of good examples of formal language. I hope this message finds you in good health. I'm writing to formally request a loan. The purpose of the loan is to finance the purchase of a reliable, efficient vehicle. Key details. So, you know, a very nicely structured email with some good examples of language. We can now ask ChatGPT to convert that to an informal style, and then we can get students to compare the two and see how they're different and which parts of the language are formal and which are informal. So I'll just change this to an informal email. And underneath ChatGPT, starting to rewrite it for me in an informal style. So it's still following the same structure as the last one, but this time it's got lots of informal things. It's got a nice emoji of a car in the line. Bank manager, hope you're doing well. I've got a small favor to ask. I'm in the market for a new set of wheels, and I was wondering if you could help me out with a loan for my dream car. I've always thought highly of the bank. Awesome services you guys provide. So lots of, here's a nice one. Here are the nitty-gritty details. So lots of nice examples of informal language. And this is something that students often struggle with because they're exposed to so much informal language through social media, and they try to use it, but sometimes in the wrong context. So now they can analyze those two letters and look for, you know, what the similarities, what are the differences, and which parts are formal and informal, and match them up. So again, that's a great way of getting ChatGPT to produce materials for us very, very quickly, and which will save us a lot of time. One of the other things that I found really useful with AI tools like ChatGPT is that it can actually act as a mentor for us to help us develop our own teaching and our own teaching knowledge. And this prompt that I'm going to show you now, this is quite a long one. It's almost a little computer program there. You can see it there. And this, if I use this prompt, what it does is it turns ChatGPT into a Socratic mentor. And that means ChatGPT will use a Socratic mentoring style to help me develop my knowledge. And so Socratic mentoring is based around asking questions and helping the student to explore their own knowledge and come to their own conclusions, and helping them to build on their existing knowledge. And that's exactly what ChatGPT will do with me if I put it in here. So I can put my prompt in there, and then I can enter the topic that I want to develop my knowledge of. So let's begin with the topic of, I'm going to say, inclusion in education. That's something I've been very interested in lately, making my materials more inclusive and my teaching more inclusive. So I put it in there, and now I can develop my knowledge of inclusion. That sounds like a great topic to explore together. Let's start by discussing the concept of inclusion in education. What does the term inclusion mean to you in the context of education? How would you define it? Okay, so starting by exploring my existing knowledge. So I'll say, so I'm going to say that it means that every student can participate in the lesson, let's say, equally. See what it says. Okay, and it says that's a good starting point. Inclusion in education aims to ensure that every student can participate fully and equally. What are some of the key factors or barriers that might prevent students from participating equally in the classroom? And how can inclusion address these challenges? So I'll just put design. I'll give a very short answer. The design of the learning materials, that can affect it. You're right. The designing of learning materials is crucial for inclusion. Let's delve deeper. And it will continue to do this. It will continue to ask me questions. It will reassure me if I'm getting things right and help to sort of refocus me if I'm getting things wrong. And if I get stuck, I can ask it for help and it will give me input. So that prompt is a great tool for getting ChatGPT to help us develop our own knowledge. It doesn't have to be inclusion. You can use it about any topic that you want to add here. At the end, it could be a form of teaching. You could be maybe exploring different methods of teaching, a different methodology, or it could be something about some element of grammar, or it could be some aspect of managing your classroom. Anything that you want to know more about, you can engage with ChatGPT and it will act as a mentor and interact with you. And you can always come back to these discussions. If I open my sidebar, these discussions are still there. You can come back to them later and re-explore them and continue them if you want to. So those things aren't gone. It can act as a kind of long-term mentor for you. So those are the three of the things that we can do as teachers. We can get it to plan lessons for us, we can get it to help us produce materials, and it can act as a training mentor to help us develop our knowledge. Those are just three of a huge number of things that we can get it to do for us. But I'd like to go on a little bit to show a few things that it can do to help students and to get you interested in that. So let's have a look at some of the things it can do to help students. One of the first things it can do is actually it can become a speaking partner. You can actually speak to ChatGPT instead of writing text to it, and it will speak back to you. There's a free plugin here that you can get for Chrome, and if you install this in your Chrome browser, then you'll be able to speak to ChatGPT instead of just writing to it. And that looks a bit like this. If I go that up to full screen, once you activate the plugin, you get a little toolbar along the bottom like this. And using this, you can select the language that you're using and select the language that ChatGPT replies with. You can select the voice as well, whether you want a male voice or a female voice, and then you can start to interact with ChatGPT using voice. In this example, I've asked it to give me feedback on my pronunciation, and it said that it will do that. And then I've read a short text to it. This is a text from the Speech Accent Archive, and I've chosen this one because it contains every sound of the English language in it. So I thought it'd be nice to test to see how well it could identify my pronunciation problems. And then I read it, and this is the feedback that ChatGPT gave to me. It made some suggestions about how I pronounce the sound in peas, on cheese and brother, and some other suggestions. I'm actually not sure how specific these suggestions were for me and how generic they were, but having these kind of suggestions and being able to talk to ChatGPT in that way is a great way for students to practice their speaking and their listening skills and their conversation skills while they're at home, and it doesn't have to be a very formal activity like this. They can just chat to it, and I'll show you some other things that they can do using the chat. So again, that's a free plugin for ChatGPT. You can just download it and install it, and then choose what language you want to interact with it. So get that later. Here's a great example of how it can help students to develop their speaking, and it can become a role play partner for our students. And again, I put you a little prompt in here which you can edit, which enables it to become a role play partner for any kind of role play you want. This is the template here. What you do is you define ChatGPT's role. You ask it to act as something. It could be act as a manager, act as a teacher. You tell it the context or the place. You tell it what the student's role will be. And then you can define some rules for it, whether it needs to be polite, the level of language it will use, things about turn taking, and you can also give ChatGPT a name within this role play. So there's a little example here. So this is a role play. I've asked ChatGPT to act as a waiter in a sushi restaurant. I'm going to be the customer. I've asked it to be polite and concise. We're going to take turns speaking. I want it to use English suitable for level B1. Wait for me to reply before continuing. And I've told it that its name is June, and it will start by asking me how it can help. So I've set out my first sentence for it. So now I'm going to go to ChatGPT, close that, start a new chat. I'll put that in there, press enter, and it starts. So it says, of course, I'll be your waiter. My name is June. How can I assist you today? So now if we're in a restaurant, the first thing I want to do is I'll say, can I have a table for two, please? Okay, and I could be doing this with my voice if I had installed the plugin. So students can do this with voice if they want to, and they'll hear the response. So certainly I'll prepare a table for two. Please follow me to your table. Is there any specific area where you'd prefer, or is anywhere fine for you? So I'm going to add like a table by the window. So like a table by the window. Says, of course, table by the window is. Please follow me. I'll show you to your preferred spot. Here's your table. May I get you started with some drinks or provide you with a menu? I'm going to be a difficult customer, and I'm going to say, I don't like this table. It's too drafty. I apologize for the inconvenience. Let me find you a more comfortable table away from the draft. Please wait a moment and I'll set up a new table for you. Thank you for your patience. So we can continue this way. And unlike scripted role plays, this one is completely spontaneous. So whatever I say and however I reply, ChatGPT will respond in a very spontaneous way. So if you give students this prompt, each one of them will have a very different conversation with ChatGPT and have a very different role play depending on their responses. So it is completely improvised. If you want to be sure they've done it and you want to know what they've done, you can ask them. If you see this little icon at the top corner here, if you click on it, you'll be able to get a link that you can share. So just click on copy link, and then they can share a link to you in an email or through a chat room or however you interact with your students, and you'll be able to go through and read their role play and see how well they've done. And then if you want to, you can ask ChatGPT to produce exercises based on that interaction. It could be a comprehension check, or it could pull out vocabulary or specific lexical chunks that you want your students to study. So again, great way of getting students practicing and at home, developing their speaking. And then when they come to do role plays with each other in the classroom, those will go much better, and they'll have had a lot of spontaneous input and practice before they do them. So I think that's a great tool to help students. Another remarkable way that I think ChatGPT can help students is with reading skills. And I think this is something that's quite unique for ChatGPT. Usually reading is a very passive activity. We get students, they open the book, they read, it's very solitary, the text is defined for them. But with ChatGPT, we can actually make that an interactive experience that immerses them and makes them part of the story. I've got an example of the prompt for that. This is based around the J.K. Rowling stories of Harry Potter. And this prompt, when you copy this prompt and put it into ChatGPT, so you'll need to give this to your students, a copy of it to your students, show them what to do with it. When they put it into ChatGPT, it starts to rewrite the story for them. But it includes them in it. And in this case, it starts from the point in the story where the students are being sorted into their different houses. They put on the sorting hat, it asks them some questions, and then decides which house they should go into. So here's the the scene being described, so students read through that, and then they have a question from the sorting hat, and it's just asking my name. So I put in my name is Nick, and then it will continue the story. And it continues by asking me questions. So the first question is, what quality do you value most in a friend? So I'll say loyalty. Okay. If you had to do a daunting challenge, which path would you be more likely to choose? The one that requires bravery, intelligence, cunning, or patience? I'll go for intelligence. And the final question, you're determined which. Now, for the final question, in a time of great adversity, what do you believe would be your greatest source of strength? Your determination, creativity, resourcefulness, or adaptability? So I'm going to say creativity. Okay. So I've answered my questions. Okay, so the sorting hat thinks for a moment, and I see great potential in you, Nick, the hat declared. You possess the qualities of intelligence, creativity, and are highly valued in one of our houses. I believe you belong in. The hall fell silent, and then the sorting hat announced Ravenclaw. There's a round of applause from the Ravenclaw table as you made your way to join your new housemates. The table was adorned with blue and bronze, and so it describes the table. What would you like to do as you sit down with your Ravenclaws? So then I can sort of dictate how the story develops by the things that I want to do. So I'll say, I want to learn some magic. Okay, and now it writes the next part of the story. I start meeting different characters from Ravenclaw, and then I go along and I start doing a lesson. And it continues this way. And at the end of each piece of text that I read, there will be a question, and that will dictate how the next part of the story, or my answer to that will dictate how the next part of the story evolves. So that's, for me, that's a great way for students of developing their reading skills, that it really immerses them and makes them part of the story. And that, I think, makes reading much more motivating for students. And each one, again, will have a unique experience. And again, they can come into the next lesson and they can either share a link to their story with you and tell you what happened, or they can discuss their stories together and tell each other what happened. And again, you could stipulate the language level for that to make it a little simpler if you have lower level students or if you have younger students. So that's a great way to get students practicing language. And you can adapt that prompt so that it's based around any book or any film. I've got one for Star Wars. There's one for Narnia, the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, that series of books. So the Chronicles of Narnia, that's it. So that, you know, it's a great way to get students reading any kind of book or getting more deeply into a story. There's another prompt here. I won't demonstrate this one, but this one works in a similar way, but it makes ChatGPT into a writing partner. And again, you define the prompt for the kind of story that you want, and you put in sort of who the hero will be, some background and those kinds of things. And then you add it to ChatGPT and you will take it in turns to write a paragraph. So ChatGPT will write the first paragraph, then the student adds a second paragraph, and so on. And again, they can share their stories with you or when they're finished, or they can continue them and you can check them out as well. So a great tool for getting students to develop writing skills too. One last thing that I'll show you that's connected with students and getting students to use it is that we can ask ChatGPT to become a homework tutor for our students. Excuse me. Usually when we set homework for our students, we set the same homework for all of the students, you know, even though we know that different students probably need to learn different things and need to know different things. But if we give our students a ChatGPT prompt, ChatGPT can design their homework for them, and it can be based around something specific that they need to learn. And again, I've put this prompt here. There's a template for it. This one's very easy. And what you just copy this in, go to ChatGPT, type it in, press enter, and then it will ask me what I want to learn. So it says, I'm ready, please let me know what specific aspects of the English language you like to study. So I shall say business collocations. So I'm going to press enter. And then what ChatGPT usually does is it starts producing some activities for me. The first one's a matching activity. So I match the two parts of the collocations. Then I've got to fill in the blanks activity. And then a much freer activity. Create sentences using business collocations based around these kind of scenarios. And again, once I've completed those, I can put the answers in and ask ChatGPT whether I'm correct. So again, any student can choose, or you can tell your students what it is they need to study. ChatGPT will devise them some homework activities, and then they can submit it to ChatGPT and get it to mark it for them. So that makes it easy for you to set 30 different types of homework for your 30 different students and not have to mark them all yourselves. If you want to check up again, you can get them to share a link to it, so you'll know whether they've done it and whether ChatGPT answered marked their homework correctly. But that's a great way of getting students working autonomously and developing their own language skills around different aspects of the language. So those are some of the things that we can get students to do. And again, I stress there are just some of the things. There are many, many more that we can go into. Okay, a couple of important things about getting ChatGPT to work for us is, it's very important that we think about the way we prompt it and how we write those prompts. Many people become disillusioned with ChatGPT and think that it doesn't produce good content. But the main problem is that they're not prompting it clearly and being clear and giving enough information about what they want. We need to sort of make the context clear for ChatGPT so it understands what kind of output you need. You need to be clear about what the topic is and any subtopics, clear about the context, the structure, what format that you want the output put in. Do you want it to be a letter? Do you want it to be a script? Do you just want bullet points? And be clear about the constraints, what you don't want it to do as well. Here's an example of a prompt that isn't very good. You could put your text into ChatGPT and say, please read my text and suggest ways I can improve it. You would get some generic suggestions, but they might not be very helpful. If you're more clear about it and you give it more information and you tell it this is the type of text, topic, who the audience is, and then the kind of feedback you want, bullet points to improve it, give suggestions, and you could even tell it specify the language level as well that you're studying at. If you give it a much more detailed prompt like this, you'll get much better feedback from it and get much more helpful feedback. So that's one important aspect of prompting or prompt engineering to get good results from AI. The other thing that you can do to get good results is to create a persona and then give the ChatGPT the persona. So, you make it into a kind of person. Like if you're studying English literature, you ask it to become a professor of English literature. And you can even give it a background story. You can suggest what accent it works with, whether it's an American accent, English accent, French accent. You can even give it an emotional profile if you want to. And there are some more detailed suggestions here about creating a persona if you want to look into that. And then once you've done this, you put this into ChatGPT and ChatGPT becomes that person, or thinks it is, and it stays in role and will answer any of your questions using that role. Another thing that you can do to get better results is you can go to the settings and then customize instructions. And if you click on customize instructions, you see this field here. And then you can program ChatGPT to always respond based on these on this kind of background. You can specify that you want to ensure that it's factual. You can specify the language level if you always want it to respond at B2 or A2 or C2. You know, you can specify lots of different things, and once you save those, all further chats that you have will be based upon that kind of profile. So that's another way of getting better responses from ChatGPT. In terms of challenges, you know, ChatGPT and tools like ChatGPT do produce some challenges for us as teachers. Some examples of those, I mean, and one of the first criticisms that I heard about ChatGPT was that, you know, it wasn't producing accurate results. People were doing research with it, and it was inventing different sources and inventing different examples. And that's something that is characteristic of ChatGPT. It is very creative. You know, I think of it a bit like an uncle that I used to have that always knew everything, even if he didn't know. You know, you could ask him any question and he'd answer it for you. And if he didn't know the answer, he'd make it up, but he would never say he didn't know. And ChatGPT is a bit like that as well. So, you know, if you're looking for facts, it's not so good. If you're looking for opinions, it's great. You know, if you want creativity, it's great. If you want facts, it's probably better to use a search engine called Find. There's a link to it here. It's going to open for me. It is. And this is like a combination of Google and ChatGPT. So if I ask it a question, I'm asking about collocations, and it produces that kind of ChatGPT stream of information. But here at the end of each thing, it gives links to where it's found that information. So if you want to follow up where the information comes from, and you've got the links down here so that you can check the information is correct and find what the source of the information is. So something like Find is much better than ChatGPT for research and academic work. In terms of cheating, which is the other big problem, of course, cheating is nothing new. Students have been copying essays, getting people to write essays, putting those up their sleeve for years. But ChatGPT and tools like it do make cheating easier. But I think actually it's time that we reconsidered our approach to assessment. You know, if it's so easy to cheat, and it always has been, maybe we're not using the right form of assessment, and we need to rethink that. I actually asked ChatGPT about how we could stop students cheating and encourage them to be more honest. And it actually produced a text with some suggestions for me, which I then used another AI tool called Lumen 5 to convert into a video. So if you want some suggestions for how to stop students cheating using AI, there are 10 tips here for how to prevent students from using it to cheat. And there are some very good suggestions here. So you can watch the video later if you want to. And again, this was produced completely by AI tools. I just asked the question, copied and pasted the text, and then used another tool to produce the video. It took about 10 to 15 minutes, I guess. The other thing that I think is interesting is that, you know, if predominantly people in the workplace are using AI tools to produce their written work, what does this mean for writing skills, and how do we adapt the way we approach writing skills to help support students develop the skills they need to work alongside AI tools? I think that's a really important question, and one for the future. There is a very good article here with some suggestions, and it's a university professor from the US who suggested something called the SPACE framework, which incorporates the use of AI tools into academic research and writing. So it's worth having a look and checking that out if you want to start thinking about, how do we use things like ChatGPT legitimately within the development of our writing and our writing skills. So check that one out later. The last link that I'll leave you with is a comparison between teachers and AI, because a lot of people ask, are we going to be put out of work by artificial intelligence? Are AI teachers going to take over? And I think, to be fair, we both have our strengths and weaknesses. And so there's an article here that you can read about it, but there's a short bullet list of each here. So, the greatest thing about AI teachers is that they aren't human. They don't get tired, irritable, or confused. They always have time for you 24/7, and they never need a break. They have no favorites, so they treat everyone the same. There may be bias in the database, but they don't treat the people they interact with bias, and sometimes teachers do. They don't hold grudges or develop prejudice. They'll answer any questions. They'll allow you to choose whatever you want to learn. Always mark your homework in time. Have an incredible depth of knowledge and available to anyone with an internet connection. But there are some great things about human teachers as well. And here are some of the examples here. I'll leave you to read those once you get the presentation. But I think, what's really great for me about human teachers is that, they genuinely care about their students, or at least the good ones do. And that caring, that knowing that another human being cares about you and wants you to do well, even when you're doing badly, even when you're not putting in the effort, that someone wants to try and motivate you to do better can really have a huge impact on somebody's life. I can think of a teacher that had a huge impact on my own life and helped me to turn it around. And maybe, you can think of somebody who's had that kind of impact on your life. And I don't think AI ever can reproduce that kind of sense of caring, even if it's able to mimic empathy at some point. So I think that's an important thing about real teachers. So I hope you come back and read that article later. So for now, I'll just say thank you for listening. If you want a copy of the presentation, you can scan that QR code and you will get the whole presentation exactly as I've been showing it to you, with all the interactive buttons and prompts and all the different links. So I hope that's been useful for you, and it's given you an introduction to some of the things that AI chatbots like ChatGPT can do for us, and how they can help us to make our life a little bit easier, to make students' learning a little bit easier, and to make it more interesting and save us some time as well. It's just scratching the surface. There's lots more, and I hope you get more from the other presentations in this conference. And once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for inviting me, and hope to see you in Barcelona sometime. Thank you.